gift to all of you is my channel May Round Joy. Today, I'm going to explain Blue Lock Season 3.
He takes his courage and charges in. He grabs Noah's shirt, which makes him fall to the floor, which just looks like it hurts. Not the prettiest of plays, maybe, but he did what was necessary. Isagi is in shock by this, and then the speakers go off as they announce that Tokimitsu just made a malicious foul, and because of that, they are giving him a yellow card. Tokimitsu right away falls to his knees because of the yellow card, but Nanas rushes over and ensures him that he had no choice, and that they would have been done for if he didn't. However, if we look a bit to the left, we see Isagi, who looks absolutely lost and heartbroken as he says that Noah doesn't care about him at all. He looks destroyed as he says that he was only planning to use him to help evolve Kaiser further. And if this wasn't bad enough, then Rin just sees Isagi as a rival to help him grow and achieve his own goals. And he finally concludes that to the world, he's just a second-rate stepping stone to help create heroes, which must have been such a crushing reality to find yourself in. After that, we see Noah holding the ball up towards Kaiser and telling him to finish it, as this is a 29-meter free kick just for him. Kaiser walks towards it as he says that it's time for Kaiser's impact, but not just that, as his eyes are burning with excitement as he tells Noah to back off. However, he isn't the only one with burning eyes, as we see Isagi, whose eyes are also starting to glow and burn up, as he thinks back to what he said and says that it's bullshit, and that he will crush all of them, and with that, we end the chapter with Kaiser getting ready for his free kick. The commentator says that it's now Bastard Munchen's free kick opportunity, and that the kicker is the new Emperor Michael Kaiser. After that, we get a close-up of Kaiser's eyes, which looked filled with frustration, as he calls Noah a shitty master, and asks him if it's true that since the beginning, Noah has just been participating in this league, just to make Kaiser evolve. Noah, who was already walking away, turns around and looks at Kaiser while telling him that it's true. Kaiser continues saying that Noah guided Isagi just to try and stimulate Kaiser, and Noah says that he is spot on. We see that the wall is beginning to build up as we have Tokimitsu, Zantetsu, and Karasu in the wall. However, while that is going on, the conversation between Kaiser and Noah isn't done just yet, as Kaiser lets out a quick laugh before telling Noah that all he cares about is creating a rival just so he can improve himself, concluding that Noah is only really thinking about himself. Kaiser looks a bit let down as he calls him a scum of a coach and asks if this is the way that the world's best does it. Noah repeats what Kaiser said, but sounds a bit confused before saying that it's just a trophy created by others. Kaiser isn't really following what Noah means. However, Noah then explains that he simply pursued the life of a striker, completely, perfectly, and instinctively everything as his own expression. He tells Kaiser that being number one is just a result of that, before saying that right now, Loki is the talent that is threatening Noah the most. After that, he tells Kaiser that after he's done settling things with Loki, he can come and try to surpass Noah himself. Kaiser's mind goes blank for a quick second, as he simply just wonders what the hell is wrong with Noah. Noah gets an intense aura around him, as he looks right into Kaiser's now lost eyes, while saying that he only wants to fight those who are stronger, and that to the bone, he is a football junkie. Kaiser gets back his cold demeanor, as he thinks to himself if Noah believes himself to be the lead of a shonen manga or something like that. However, with all this new information, he finally understands the true source of Noah's talent. After that, we quickly leave Kaiser and instead go over to Isagi, whose brain is about to explode as his thoughts go at 100 miles per hour. Isagi is focused on one thing only, and that's to try and predict where Kaiser will be aiming his free kick. He stands before the goal and thinks that if he were to steal Kaiser's goal from here, then he'd either push in the rebound of his shot, or if not that, then he could change the trajectory of the shot to score. Isagi thinks that either way, he has to read whether it's going to the right corner or the left, as well as if Kaiser is going to put the same backspin as before. However, he starts to think that maybe this time, Kaiser will make a feint and smash it straight into the right corner with all his might. He looks at Kaiser and knows that if he reacts after Kaiser shoots, then there's no way that he will make it in time. So instead of reacting after Kaiser has shot, he has to predict right or left, and then bet on the place that he thinks Kaiser will shoot on, so that he can start running first. Isagi is in a gamble with Kaiser's thoughts. Kaiser has placed the ball down on the ground as he looks forward intensely, as he thinks that he won't live the way that Noah wants him to. He thinks that Noah probably wants him to be his rival within Bastard Munchen, but Kaiser won't fall for that story, as he says that he himself will create his own new story. Kaiser closes his eyes and says that he is finally feeling his zero self. He says that his zero self is just a pathetic thing that only wants to be loved. He calls it a worthless piece of trash that can only live by hurting others and waiting to be loved. However, this time around it's different, as he refers himself to Michael and tells himself to come on, and instead, aim for the love. He starts to run as he says to pour in your malice, which just sounds kind of catchy. Anyway, the defenders are getting ready for Kaiser's shot, and Chappie says that here it comes. Chappie is trying to guard Isagi, who just thinks to himself that he has to bet everything on this and read Kaiser's kick. He thinks about it one last time before he starts to run off, while having his puzzle pieces almost covered around him. Kaiser runs towards the ball and is getting into shooting range when his aura starts to reappear again, and then he fires off an absolute killer free kick, which, lucky for Isagi, is heading for the left corner, which is just what Isagi predicted. The ball is getting closer to the goal, and Isagi starts to wonder if the goalkeeper reads it as well. However, it does not matter, as he says that if he hits the kick and deflects it, then Isagi can still come in and finish it off with his 2 gun volleys. However, as he glances at the ball again, he realizes something as he sees the ball starting to curve like crazy. He's confused for a second, as he says that this is a much more extreme curve than before, which is something that even Isagi is having a hard time believing, as he finally realizes that Kaiser's aiming for the right corner while pretending to go for the left. Isagi can't believe it, as he says that Kaiser got him. However, when he hears something behind him, he looks back and is shocked to see Loki starting to sprint like a wild man. Isagi can't quite understand what it is that Loki wants to do, as he's moving after he saw where the ball was going. However, after seeing Loki coming closer and closer, he finally gets what it is that Loki is trying to do. However, it's so absurd that he can't believe it and says that Loki's got to be kidding. However, as he sees Loki getting closer and closer, his face suddenly goes totally blank as he sees Loki somehow just in time reaching the ball and blocking it from going in with his left leg. Both Isagi and Kaiser can't believe it as they say that this is not human speed. On top of that, Kaiser is furious, as his chance to prove himself just got blocked, and Isagi doesn't quite know what to say, as he just says that this can't be explained by logic, and that this is what the world calls a prodigy. After that, we see Loki, who's just gotten back on the ground and is hitting an insanely hard pose. However, we then get a close-up of his eyes, which were filled with a feeling that I can't really put into words. They look somehow reborn and filled with a bright glow. With Kaiser's kick gone, Loki ends the chapter by calling the Kaiser impact too slow, which is the wildest thing he could ever say, as the Kaiser impact has been praised as one of the fastest kicks, if not the fastest in the series. We start off by hearing what the commentators have to say after Loki's incredible save of Kaiser's free kick in the last chapter. Anyway, they say that the divinely fast wonder child Loki just stopped the Kaiser impact with his superhuman speed. And then we get a quick panel off Loki, who's got a big smirk on his face. Someone who's definitely not got a smirk on his face is Kaiser, who looks furious as he says damn it. After we see Kaiser being salty, we see Isagi, who's just blown away by all of this as he looks at Loki with a stone expression. He thinks to himself that Loki was able to react after he saw it and still stopped it, which is just wild. Moving on, we go to the PXG players as Nanase screams that the second ball is coming. Karasu hears this and goes straight into action as he jumps up and heads away the ball to Zantetsu. Zantetsu gets the ball just where he wants it and compliments Karasu. Karasu then says, "Time for your stupid speed," which I would assume means time for your stupid speed. But as he and Hiroi had a bit of an accent, it came out weird. And then Zantetsu, out of nowhere, says that he is on his weight, which just doesn't make sense, and it made me laugh more than I should have. Anyway, Zantetsu really proves his weight later as he uses his jet counter to absolutely sprint through the Bayern Munich players. He gets behind Ness in no more than a second, and Ness can't believe it as he just thinks that Zantetsu is too fast. Raichi, also on the defense, screams at everyone not to rush in and instead play for time. Kiora adds an insane amount to this critical conversation as he just says, K. That's the classic Kiora, which we love. Anyway, behind Zantetsu, we have Isagi, who's watching everything carefully when suddenly he gets into his mind and asks himself what really is a genius. He says that up until now he's automatically thought of anyone amazing as a genius, but after seeing Loki's insane speed just now, he feels like labeling him a genius just doesn't cover it. His brain starts to work overtime as he knows that he has to analyze it to win, as it's crucial for him to understand the concept of genius. He continues and says that regardless of how much logic he's accumulated, a genius is someone who can transcend all that with their unimaginable playstyle. In that case, Rin is absolutely on the level of a genius, and then the same goes for Noah. But then he starts to think about himself and wonders what he is. However, He leaves his thoughts for a quick second as he runs to Noah's side and screams, "Master Noah!" He gets Noah's attention and asks him what he should do in this situation. Noah, just with a blank expression, looks at him before saying that he clearly asked Isagi to bring him a winning theory. Isagi is a bit shocked and caught off guard by this, but Noah explains that he is only interested in those who seek to best him, and right now he feels nothing from Isagi. Isagi's face quickly goes right into despair as he looks legit crushed by this. But then he goes back into his mind and says, "So that's it. Geniuses aren't logical. They fascinate people by living however they want and naturally become the centers of the soccer world." Those are the sort of people it refers to, however, as he's figured that out. He ends it by saying that if that's the case, then he is no genius. His puzzle pieces start to slowly fade away around him as he says that he is someone who only continually adapts to geniuses and calls himself a talented learner. After that, we leave our favorite boy and see Charles, who's going crazy on the field. Managed to dribble away Raichi, and after that, he looked with a determined face and said that it was time for another round for the strikers, and of course adding that devil emoji like usual. Anyway, after that, he sends away a cross up on the field, and it looks like it's heading to Shidu as he says, "Good one, Charboy." However, he gets company right off the bat as Kaiser comes in and says that it's not happening on his watch and also calls them a shitty perv hotline, which sounds a bit weird as Charles is only 15. Anyway, after that, we see a quick panel with a tongue sticking out, which could only mean that it's the freak Itoshi Rin who calls Kaiser tepid and also calls him a blue rose, which is just so dope. Anyway, Rin comes before both Kaiser and Shidu and makes a flawless trap while saying that this hotline is for him and the contrarian. After that, with a weird smile, Shidu legit tells Rin not to cuck him, which is so crazy, like you are still talking about a goddamn child, but he just tells them to fight nice, like it's nothing wrong at all. Anyway, quickly moving on, we see Rin going absolutely wild on the field as he is legit destroying everyone in Bastard Munchen. Reichi screams at them to box him in, but Hiroi is annoyed as he thinks that they may run into him, but that he would still not stop and calls him a monster as he's got his spiky rage aura coming right off him while guarding the ball with his life. However, after that, the rat comes before Rin, and he tells Rin nope, and also says, "Hail the three treasures," like he always does. Anyway, as Rin gets closer, he also says that his brakes are busted and calls him a tongue boy. Rin, who's totally obsessed with this new flow of himself, just says you before he bashes into Igarashi's body and slams him onto the ground. Right when Igarashi's body makes contact with the ground, the speaker goes off, and they say that Gurumu Igarashi is down once more. But not only that, as the tackle earned Rin Itoshi another foul, making it Bastard Munchen's ball. And now we can see how furious Rin is by being done over by Igarashi for a second time. However, Igarashi is just ecstatic to the max, as he's managed to once again stop the berserker Rin. Reichi from the side screams at Igarashi and compliments him. Hiyori is dipping sweat from his face as he says that Igarashi stopped him, but just barely this time. But if we look a bit further away, we see Isagi, who's just standing still like a statue. He is quiet for a while before he says that if all he can do is just brush up his talent, then how can he ever hope to win against these geniuses? He thinks back to his time in Blue Lock and says that this is how he's always fought. He's used his eyes and brain to read the enemy's movements and then get one step ahead of everyone else. He's simply won using logic, and with that, he realizes that he isn't actually special at all, as anyone could imagine these things. In fact, he only developed his direct shot weapon through persistent effort and then made it his own, one step at a time. But that was enough, until now, that is. He's managed to scrape by with his average talent, but the arena of the world's best strikers is swarming with geniuses. Physical abilities beyond anything he could have imagined, incomprehensible impulses to score goals, and unhuman philosophies. All of those amazing guys have those things naturally, and if this is a stage where only geniuses can survive, then he will definitely disappear here. In the end, what he was doing can all be explained logically. His power of imagination won't let him survive what lies ahead. However, he still wants to beat Rin, and he also wants to be the best in the world. However, right now, he can't even imagine himself winning. He says this heartbreaking line as he feels tons of tears rolling down his face as he doesn't know what to do anymore. However, someone who knows his ego, who we go to now, he says that this is it, Yoichi Isagi. That wall of the talented will become your stepping stone, and the truth of the world of talent is that it's hopelessly illogical. But only those who have reached that can discover a new path. He puts his finger in front of his face, which is filled with a furious aura, as he has a glowing and burning fire coming out of his eyes, as he says that it's time to learn the formula for evolution, Yoichi Isagi. We start off with seeing some rather interesting characters, but we also have Ego, who's going to give us a lecture on DNA. He says that as a general rule, All organisms are born after receiving half of their mother and father's genes. However, there are occasionally copy errors, and a child is born with a trait that neither of its parents possesses, for example, extreme smallness, height, speed, or sensitivity of feeling. In most cases, that child is singled out for being different or cannot compete with others, and so is culled out without passing on their genes. However, in very rare instances, that trait happens to be advantageously susceptible to their environment. That gene proliferates through natural selection, and the trait that was once a mutation becomes a new standard for the species. After that, these genetic cycles repeat over and over again until the original species has become a totally different creature. We then see Ego, who looks down at his hand and says that this is evolution. Henri, who is standing right by Ego, is astonished by all of this, as she even admitted that she had no idea. She then says that it's basically how Pichu turns into Pikachu, right? Ego tones then shifts as he says that foolish adults who stop studying will get culled out by natural selection. Henri immediately gets really embarrassed by this, as she starts to look down to the ground and says that she will make sure to do better. However, after that she looks up and gets a serious expression, as she asks Ego, what connection does evolution have to soccer? After that we get a full image of Ego's insane setup, really showing us how much of a gamer he is, as he tells Henri that this is just his personal theory about talent. But the various evolutions human society undergoes are essentially the same as this. He further goes on and explains that humans born with traits that others lack have a hard time being understood and live difficult lives, but that might be a gene that will cause humanity to evolve. Those areas of differentiation produce unique expressions of body and mind, and there are some people who can cast those expressions out into the world and admit them. There are some revolutionary expressions which are suitable for the era and circumstances, and these can change the world standards. The ones with those seeds are what Ego calls geniuses, he says with an intense and determined facial expression. However, we are far from over with Ego's lecture as he continues and says that to present society, that innovation is never something the genius can achieve on their own. Someone needs to discover the seed, comprehend its worth and be able to communicate it to the world. By boosting its feasibility and reproducibility, they turn it into a new world standard. The ones who do that are called talented learners. Henri, who's finally allowed to speak, says that she finally understands. She says that the talent mutations that geniuses have eventually become common, and that it's the same as the genetic evolution that Ego explained earlier. Ego says that Henri is spot on, and says that he thinks that it's how human culture has continued to evolve, and the same could be said about soccer. The mutant geniuses with abnormal physical abilities and incredible plays become singularity points, and by analyzing the geniuses and forming new tactics or using data to counter them, the talented learners develop players using a new kind of logic, which is just how soccer has continued to evolve. Henri's eyes suddenly light up as she says that it's the formula for evolution, and then we get right back to Ego, who gives off an intense and wild feeling as he looks at his screen and tells Isagi to open his eyes and tells him that the world doesn't just revolve around geniuses, as geniuses and talented learners share the stage, and talented learners like Isagi himself have their own path to becoming the world's best. And after that, we finally get into the meat of this chapter, which is of course the gameplay as the match restarts and the rat passes the ball right over to Noah, who traps it easily. We then get a small panel of Isagi's eyes, which are burning up with determination as he says that there's no way that he himself can defeat a genius. As he is running behind Noah and Rin, he thinks about the absurd plays that geniuses make and says that they are impossible for him to try to pull off on the spot, as he can't even begin to imagine it. But then something clicks as he thinks that he actually might have always fought as a talented learner. He thinks back to the time he used Baru's blind spot against him, also his two-gun volley direct shot, and not to mention his luck goal in the U20 match. He thinks about all of this as he says that he has analyzed somebody's talent, copied it, and then made his own arrangements based on predictions, thinking that he has stolen from everyone else and still barely scraped by. His facial expression looks furious as he grinds his teeth while thinking that he doesn't have enough originality to create something from zero, saying that he is a genuine second-rate talented learner. After that, we see Rin, who tries to get the ball away from Noah, but Noah just in time sends it over to Kaiser, who alongside Noah does some passes back and forth with Kaiser. Isagi then thinks that this game just revolves around the geniuses and that the world is waiting for another super goal. Isagi is starting to look a bit lost and afraid as he thinks that nobody's going to pass to a second-rate player like himself and that he needs to steal it for himself. But just as he was in his mind, he noticed something to his right. It was Loki who was coming with his godly speed. Isagi was shocked, as even though he just seen Loki by his side, He was now all the way up on the field thanks to his insane speed. And because of that, Isagi realizes that this is on a whole other level. He looks lost as he looks at Loki while saying that he doesn't have a chance in hell. Loki manages to actually catch up to a pass sent by Kaiser to Noah, which means that PXG has the ball and is going all out for an attack. But we aren't done with Isagi just yet. While that happened, he looked at Loki closely and thought that between him and the geniuses lies an unsurpassable genetic wall of talent. It looks like time stops for Isagi as he realizes it, and he looks crushed to the max as he says that God is so unfair. However, he wasn't all alone in this thought. As he hears someone to his right, he looks over and sees Kaiser, who's screaming his heart out. Kaiser asks how unfair he can be and calls the gods shitty while having a super annoyed facial expression as Loki stole his pass. But this changes things as Isagi hears it, but to a start, he is so confused by Kaiser's words. He looks over at Kaiser and wonders why Kaiser would be saying such a thing, as it was exactly what Isagi was thinking. He says that it's bullshit and that Kaiser is a genius like them, asking him in his mind if he isn't. He says that, unlike Isagi, Kaiser is actually able to hold his own against the other geniuses. But then, as Isagi's puzzle pieces start to spin like crazy, something clicks for him as he finally figures it out. He looks intensely at Kaiser and asks if it could be true that he is at the same level as Isagi, and if Kaiser is also a talented learner just like Isagi. To end it off, we see this amazing panel with Isagi's puzzle pieces floating right by Kaiser and some of his iconic moments on them. We start off with the commentators speaking. They say that it's now only one more minute remaining with the Masters in play, and also begs the question of what the last goal will look like. And then, if we take a look at the actual panel, we see Loki blitzing through the field while Kaiser is chasing after him as his life depended on it. However, it's not only Kaiser, as Isagi is right behind him and is also giving it his all to catch up. He has his pieces floating around him as he looks at Kaiser and says that he isn't a genius, but instead, he's just like Isagi. He grasps the field through his senses, which makes him into a talented learner as well. After that, he decides to have a bit of a revisit to some of his and Kaiser's moments together, where he concludes that as he's thinking back now, all his words and actions, even though those things seemed so incomprehensible, there were reasons and logic behind all of it, even his Kaiser impact. A striker using the world's fastest kick is a weapon he had to think up. It's not like Loki or Rin's abnormal intuitive strength. He's the type who makes plans around what the world regards as the ultimate, but as he says that sentence in his head, something clicks, and he says, "Wait, the world," with a surprising tone. After that, we get a close-up of his face and two puzzle pieces linking together, and he asks if those things could be the same, referring to talented learners and world-style players. He says that of the self-style and world-style ego types he theorized, the world-style ego type finds it easy to perform in relation to the world's values and meaning, and a talented learner faces their opponents with logic, which means that those two concepts might be the same thing, which in turn would mean that geniuses have the self-style egos. After all of that heavy thinking, he asks his brain to hold up and really think this through, as this could be his next breakthrough. He says that pursuing value and meaning in relation to oneself is what produces a genius's inspiration and unthinkable inventions, and then he looks shocked as he thinks that they have to be the same thing, and also says that this fits right into his analytical framework. All of this would mean that the world doesn't just revolve around geniuses. After that, we see a panel of Nagi, Ryo, Baru, Snuffy, Kunigami, Chigiri, Bachira, and of course Isagi down in the bottom. After that, he says that geniuses are able to be discovered because there are talented learners, and as they admire each other and compete with each other, their egos are honed in the fight, and that's how all of Blue Lock has continued to evolve. We then get this awesome looking panel with Isagi saying that geniuses and talented learners aren't in a hierarchical relationship, but that they instead spur each other on in a related relationship. After that, we leave Isagi's brain for a quick moment as we get back into the game. Loki is still in control of the ball and is advancing on the pitch at an astonishing speed. Raichi screams at the team that they need more bodies over here as Loki is about to blitz through them. Hiyori says that he understands and that he is on it. Just then, Noah comes and tries to shove Loki to the side, but the master striker isn't folding that easily, as Noah's push doesn't even make him flinch. Isagi, who is a bit behind them, says that now that his head is clear, he's certain that he can do this, and continues by saying that up until now, he was trying to use the same insane methods as the geniuses. However, that would have never worked as he isn't one of them. He's breathing heavily as he thinks that geniuses and talented learners, self-style and world-style types, all of them have different ways of using their abilities. With this in mind, he knows that nothing will happen unless his talent and effort align. He looks at Kaiser, who honestly looks a bit lost, but anyway, Isagi thinks that he needs to think like a talented learner and wonders how Kaiser is able to hold his own against the geniuses. He thinks back to some of the earlier stages of the match and says that he started being effective in this match once he dropped his fixation on Isagi and the options he'd been using and instead started applying himself logically. That was the moment when things changed. However, that would mean that for Isagi to take the next step, he would also need to drop his fixations. Everything from the rivalry he feels towards Rin, his malice towards Kaiser, and of course his admiration for Noah. After that, we legit get this insane panel where Isagi looks like he and his puzzle pieces are about to enter some sort of alternative dimension as we see some sort of light right in the end. Anyway, as he's about to go into his domain expansion, he says that he's dropped all of his fixations, so he starts to wonder what's left for him now. After that, we get a full panel of a bunch of puzzle pieces, but also a huge one, and in this panel, we have two of Isagi's most vital moments, which are both from after the Kira game, when he first screamed out of anger, and then later started to cry due to losing the match. However, when he's done daydreaming, it looks like he legit becomes God. I don't want to glaze Isagi too much, but the panels are just godly in this chapter, as Isagi looks like he's being reborn with some sort of white glow around him. After that, he says that he wants to win, and asks himself if that isn't right, and also calls out his name, Yoichi Isagi. After that, we leave God Isagi and go back into the Firely game where Rin now has the ball. However, the rat is standing right in front of him. He says hey to Rin and asks him to come on already while calling him a monster. Rin looks at him furiously, as he thinks that if he runs into him, then the actor monk will just fall over again, which is also why Loki gave Rin this space with his pass. We then see Rin taking his foot by the ball, and in the next panel, he's just magically behind the rat. I'm guessing that he did some magic dribbles, as he has his rage aura following him right behind him. We then get a small panel of Loki watching Rin closely and just saying yes, while the rat is just in shock by Rin's skills. After that, we see two random bastard Munchen defenders, and one of them tells the other one to cut off his pass. However, Rin looks determined like never before, and he licks his tongue while telling them all to bring it on, and for all of them to come at him, as Rin wants to dive headfirst into the monster breakpoint. And then we see this crazy panel of Rin just sprinting in between the players and taking his hands on their chest to push them out of his way, like Rin just shoved them to the sides while looking at them with a deadly facial expression. And I really mean deadly because just look at him, he looks just like a monster whose only goal is to score. However, just when Rin thought that his path was clear, someone comes and ruins his fun, and who else could it be than his sworn rival, Isagi Yoichi, who's still in this godly state as he is just glowing to the max. He starts rushing towards Rin while saying that it's not enough for a freak like Rin, and while looking into Rin's eyes, he says that Rin has been waiting for Isagi. Then in his own brain, Isagi thinks that if Rin is a genius monster, then Isagi will become a talented learner monster. We get a close-up of Isagi's eyes, and his pupil is just a picture of Rin with puzzle pieces around it as he tells Rin to come on and that it's time for Rin to face the new Isagi. While Isagi is looking goldy, Rin is like always looking like a monster, as he has his spikes piercing through his back as he's coming with the ball. However, that's far from everything, as we also get a small panel of Raichi who screams at his team to stop furious Rin from advancing any further. We also have Shidu on Rin's left, who's just in pure shock by Rin's insane playstyle, as he looks at Rin while thinking that this can't be for real. Then in the bottom, we have Hiyori, who prays to God for Isagi to make it in time to stop Rin, and with a mere 10 seconds left on the star change system, Isagi does just that, as he's still in his god form comes right in front of Rin, and I just love this new form Isagi's got, like, he legit looks reborn and so glowy, and it's so cool. Anyway, Isagi's eyes are filled with puzzle pieces as he looks straight to Rin and tells him to come on. Rin is just a mindless beast at this point with his tongue out, so he just looks at Isagi as if he were his newest prey. Then, out of nowhere, Rin speeds up like a flash as he now zooms past the two random defenders in Bastard Munchen. Loki gets a smirk on his face as he looks pleasantly surprised by Rin while telling him to go and calling him a new star. Noah also looks visibly shocked, but he is so boring, so he doesn't decide to add to the conversation. However, after the Masters, we see Isagi once again, who says Rin's name to himself. Bit weird if you ask me. After that, we see this godly panel of both Rin and Isagi in their respective new forms, with Rin in his monster rage form, while Isagi is in his newly awakened god form. Anyway, as they are closing the distance to each other, Isagi asks Rin in his head if he does not want to destroy Isagi, not to mention that Rin is completely locked on winning this game. After that, in the next panel, we see that Isagi is going in to try and take away the ball by intercepting it. But Rin's eyes then start to work overtime as they start to activate, and because of that, he sees through Isagi's play. We also have a small panel of Gagamaru, who is probably begging Isagi not to let Rin pass. After that, Rin once again closes the gap and says Isagi's name over and over, as if he is confessing. When he is done with his lovely-dovey stuff, he gets almost uncomfortably close to Isagi, and then, with Isagi unable to move, Rin takes this chance to act as he swings back his foot and shoots a killer shot towards the goal. After his shot, his rage and monster aura just disappear, and his eyes become clear as he thinks that this is finally his win, and that he won against his sworn rival. But just as Rin is thinking that, Isagi drops a bombshell as he asks Rin if it feels good and also calls him a pervert, before telling Rin that Isagi is just a sacrificial pawn after all. As Rin hears this, his facial expression quickly changes, and he looks in total disbelief as Isagi says that this is what stabs a genius, and it's nothing else than a chemical reaction between prodigies. And then, we see exactly what Isagi is talking about, as behind both Rin and Isagi Kaiser was laying low, waiting just like a hyena. And as Rin shoot the ball, he quickly came to set an end to it. Rin, who's still not fully grasped the situation, questions if Isagi let himself be destroyed in order to lure that damn Rose to then make a shot block once again, which was spot on what happened. However, this plan isn't fully perfected yet, as even though Kaiser was there in time and made contact with the ball, he wasn't able to hit it in the right spot to fully kick it away, saying that the shot is shallow. As he looks at the ball going past him, the ball gets an insane curve on it as it's heading for the frame of the goal. Everyone's eyes are glued to the ball as it feels like time suddenly stopped, and that they can only watch what is about to happen. Gagamaru looks right at the ball and says, "Damn," before he starts to pray for the ball not to go in. However, sadly, his prayers weren't received as the ball hit the post and is going towards the goal again. Isagi's and Kaiser's faces drop as they both in sync, saying that it's a rebound and that even with all of their efforts, the ball is still going in. Then we have Charles, who's surprisingly not hitting his regular devil emoji, but instead says a singing note. Anyway, after Charles, we get a close-up shot of the ball, which bounces on the line, and it looks like it's just about to go in, which would mean the end for Bastard Munchen and PXG's victory. However, if you thought that the GOAT Gagamaru would just let that happen, then you are so wrong, as Gagamaru just in time jumps down to the ground and is able to deflect the ball just in the last second with the help of his new ability, the Bear Claw Deflective. He quickly punches away the ball out of bounds. This leaves the whole stadium in shock as we see Charles, the Rat, Loki, and Noah all being visibly confused as to how Gagamaru was able to make this insane save. And it's not only them, as the commentators scream their hearts out as they say that Gagamaru managed to stop the ball just in time. After that, we see this amazing panel with both Gagamaru and Isagi celebrating, with Gagamaru jumping up to the sky and Isagi holding his fist up to celebrate their insane save. Both Raichi and the Rat rush over to him, and the Rat jumps on top of him out of happiness. The commentators screamed no goal, saying that Gin Gagamaru, in a nail-bitingly desperate situation, managed to keep his team alive with a big save. After that, we get over to Isagi, who is hitting this crazy, insanely cold pose as he hits the ground and clenches his fists. We also have two randoms behind him, pretending to be out of breath like they did something, and we also get a small panel of Rin biting his teeth together, being extremely frustrated about his missed goal. Anyway, after that, Hiyori comes by, and he pats Isagi's head while telling him that he actually managed to do it. Hiyori looks ecstatic and has big eyes as he compliments Isagi, and asks him just how much of that he calculated and calls him a monster. Isagi, who's sweating like crazy, says that, well, aside from Gagamaru's save, he had calculated all of it. After that, we get a small panel of the Rat, Raichi, and Gagamaru still celebrating, and I love how funny Gagamaru looks as he does his peace sign. Anyway, Hiyori helps Isagi up from the ground while saying that it's nuts, and asks if Isagi had given up on beating Rin all the way from the start, which Isagi says that he had. He thinks back to his insane plays, and explains that if he had just charged in like normal, then he would have had a low chance of stopping him, so he just focused on restricting his shot course, and after that, he left the block up to Kaiser. Isagi thinks that if Rin's shot got past him, Rin would have definitely scored, and that was something that Kaiser could anticipate, and therefore Isagi trusted him to come and stop it, saying that he knew his psychology and abilities and managed to exploit them all. Hiyori looks at Isagi shocked while saying that it's crazy, and saying that Isagi used himself as a pawn and exploited Kaiser, then asking if this is the first time he's had to think of himself as the object and not others. Isagi just casually says that he guesses so. However, he says that if he lost here, then he would just disappear after being devoured by geniuses. So he figured his fleeting personal feelings don't really matter, and he felt like the only way out was to sell his soul to achieve victory, also saying that he found a new way of fighting. Also, he looks absolutely insane as he is saying this, and more puzzle pieces just start to appear around him. However, Hiyori looks a bit worried and asks Isagi what he means about selling his soul. We also see that Kaiser is having a sneak peek into their conversation from a bit away. Just as Isagi is about to further explain to Hiyori, he gets interrupted by none other than the rage monster Rin, who calls Isagi tepid. He asks him if he's really that happy about blocking one measly shot, and not only that, but saying that Isagi's striker ego is totally rotten. Neither Hiyori nor Isagi says anything to start, but then Isagi's hair starts to cover his eyes, and then we know that it's really about to go down, as he says that Rin is the tepid one. Rin is just confused and asks him what he is talking about. Isagi then says that it wasn't just one measly shot, as the whole world wanted a super goal from Rin himself. They were waiting for the birth of a hero in the Neo-Egoist League. However, Isagi clenches his fist, and an aura starts to appear around it, as he says that he tore that away from him and also crushed it. We see that both of the masters are also eagerly listening in to the conversation, as Isagi continues and says that he bent history to his will, and that his logic surpassed Rin's inspiration. After that, Isagi looks super manic and overall scary as he looks straight towards Rin and says that he proved that a talented learner can defeat a genius, also saying that he's never felt such egotistic pleasure and calls Rin a beast. Rin is just in total shock as he doesn't understand what has gotten into Isagi. However, I love that the savage and bold Isagi that we love is back, as he doesn't care about anything anymore. However, the commentators break off the intense tension between the two, as they say that the 3 minutes for the star change system are up, and that the masters are being forcibly swapped out. Loki looks a bit annoyed and says that he got it, but as he is leaving, he says that his playing was all for nothing, saying that he joined because it seemed fun, but that he can't believe that Rin was unable to score off his pass, which is just so insane by putting all of the blame on one of his players. But sure, however, the little brat isn't done just yet, as he says that at this rate it will take 10,000 years before the world's best striker comes from Japan. However, someone who isn't going to let that slide is, of course, the new savage Isagi, whose eyes have just gotten fully blank as he straight up tells Loki to shut it and that he is the one who lost. Loki looks back and asks him what he is on about. Isagi continues and says that his visualization and the future were where Rin scored. It was none other than both Isagi and Kaiser who managed to smash it apart. While still having his eyes totally blanked out, he starts emitting an aura on top of it, as he tells Loki to just be a man and admit that he lost, saying that Loki is awfully full of himself for someone who just happened to be born fast. And when I tell you that I was jumping out of my seat from excitement, I mean it. This is what Blue Lock is all about, the insane shit talk. Anyway, Loki loses it as he hears it, and it looks like he plans to absolute murder Isagi. But just then Noah comes by and places his hand on Isagi's shoulder and tells him that it's enough, and that this is streaming worldwide. However, he does admit that his play definitely surpassed what they could have imagined, calling Isagi's play a victory, and is about to give him some tips on what to do from now, I would assume. But it's hard to say when Isagi isn't even letting Noah speak as he cuts him off, and also shoves Noah's hand off his shoulder. Isagi tells him to shut up, and calls him a shitty master, saying that he is just like Loki, and we can just see on Noah's eyes that he doesn't like this at all. Isagi reminds Noah that he used him as a tool to get Kaiser to awaken, and says that he doesn't trust Noah anymore. After that, he starts to squeeze Noah's hand extremely hard, and also drags him closer to him, but not in the lovey-dovey type of way, as he looks furious, while telling Noah that he will bring him a theory that surpasses him, and tells him to just keep waiting at the top for him, as Isagi declares that the next World Cup is his. Noah, who's just so bland, just says that he's looking forward to it and says Isagi's name, but like, come on, couldn't we have gotten something more, like even a "I would like to see you try" would have gotten me more fired up, but whatever, it's Noah after all. However, after that declaration, the world is in total shock, as the commentators say that he just declared war against Noah, his own team's master. After that, Karasu adds in by asking him who Isagi thinks he's picking a fight with. The rat just looks in shock as he says Isagi's name, but Hiyori, the sadist himself, looks hyped up to the max while calling Isagi a dumbass and saying that he is totally twisted. After that, we can see Isagi walking peacefully on the pitch, or maybe not peacefully as he has just declared war, but you get what I mean. He thinks that he has to sell his soul for victory, abandon all of his pride and useless sentiment, and says that if he uses himself as a tool, he can go as far as defeating Rin. After that, we see that Isagi was in fact walking towards Kaiser. However, he looks like a straight-up demon behind him, as he tells Kaiser that thanks to him being here, he found a new way of thinking. Kaiser isn't fully understanding what Isagi is getting at, but then we get a close-up of Isagi, and I can't even describe what his face looks like, but it just looks like this is the only thing that really matters to him, and he looks like he is determined to get it, as he has an insane aura around him while he asks Kaiser to team up. It looks like Kaiser is just thinking what the fuck, as they have been going on fighting for about 100 chapters by now, but Isagi, determined and having a ton of puzzle pieces around him, puts his hand out and tells Kaiser that the two of them can end this neo-egoist league together. However, Kaiser in his mind is in total shock and just pure disbelief as he says a team up with him and none other than his sworn rival, Isagi. Also, I like how Isagi is legit, just staring Kaiser into his soul, like his eyes are dead set on this. After that, we get this insanely cool panel with both looking extremely mighty as they stand up against each other. Kaiser then finally speaks and asks him if he has lost his mind, saying Isagi's name and reminding him that before him isn't just a teammate, but the person he wanted to defeat. Isagi is calm and says that it doesn't matter at all. He says that Kaiser has to get it as well, that at the rate that they are going in, they have no chance of beating a genius. Kaiser looks annoyed at this, but stays quiet for now. They then glance over at Rin, as Isagi tells Kaiser that right now, they can't stop him alone. He tells Kaiser that if they let them score just one more goal, then it's game over and their time as undefeated is gone. Isagi, while looking pretty cool, says that they can't predict when Rin is going to pull off something beyond their imagination again, and in order to stop that genius, their only way would be to combine their high level of logic. Isagi reminds Kaiser about their last play, and says that they barely managed to stop him with defense earlier, which is proof that it works, so now they should just sync up on the offense too. As they are talking, they have steam coming out of their mouths, and then Isagi puts out his hand, and with a fierce tone, says that they are going to prove that hard workers can beat a genius. Kaiser looks more and more annoyed as he asks if this is really the reason for Isagi wanting to team up with Kaiser. Isagi just confidently says yes, and that right now he cares more about something bigger than just working through his own feelings, explaining that he wants to dedicate himself to this plan of proving it to the world alongside the Emperor Kaiser. After that, Isagi makes a total turn and gets a kind of ominous and fierce feeling to himself, and a cube starts to build up his puzzle pieces. Anyway, he says that throwing away their emotions to win, and alongside this feeling of using someone as a tool, is something that Isagi wants to fully immerse into. He says that with pure determination, which makes Kaiser's eyes pop as he looks at him in disbelief and wonders if Isagi has completely lost it and asks if this is pure madness. However, he says no and stops himself as he thinks that this is more like Isagi's true sanity and his true ego. Kaiser then gets a smug face on himself as he lets out a laugh before saying that it's fine. Let's say that the two of them decide to team up. Then who will get to score the final goal? Isagi isn't caught off guard by this question, as he already had an answer prepared for this, as he tells Kaiser that they will keep it fair and says that the most logical outcome for the act of winning. Kaiser is a bit slow in the head and asks Isagi to explain it in other words, which Isagi of course says is nothing more than just luck, which we can use as the final piece of the cube from earlier. Anyway, Isagi tells Kaiser that they will do their best with logic and pass the ball, and whoever has the final ball at that moment will score the goal. We then get an upside panel of Kaiser, which was quite annoying to look at, but he says that it makes sense, but that for it all to work, they would have to put their emotions and personal feelings aside. Isagi says that he is spot on, but that it's a condition that both of them would need to follow. After that, Isagi starts to dissolve, and his pieces start to flow away, as he tells Kaiser that from here on the battlefield, they will abandon their egos and become the best strikers to win. We then see that his puzzle pieces are being replaced, and that he is getting reborn and entering his god mode as he looks right in the eyes and says that it's the only way for them hard workers to surpass a genius. This makes Kaiser just pure stunned as his face goes blank. After that, he imagines himself as a classic anime villain as he takes his hand on his head, covering his eyes while saying that he understands. He says that he still hates Isagi's guts to death. However, for a plan like this, he might consider it. Isagi points to his chest and says that he still wants to crush Kaiser and not to misunderstand him. However, this is a cold, calculated contract to get what they both want. He looks intense as he says that he wants to surpass Rin and destroy Noah, right? Kaiser still has an edgy attitude and just says, yeah, and that their goals align. After they say that, they walk side by side and give each other a super dope high five as they, in sync, say that to surpass a genius, they have formed a devil's contract with one goal in mind. But please, what is this insanity of a panel? It looks so incredibly dope, and I just love it. After that, the commentators get into action as they say that now the final stage of the Neo Egoist League Championship. Even with the coaches participating, the fierce battle is still unevolved, now that both teams will make a substitution with the coaches stepping down, and we see that the Dark Horse Kunigami is going in for Noah, while Gabon goes in for Loki. Karasu has a smirk as he tells everyone to just end it already. Hiyori is just in pure shock seeing Isagi and Kaiser together, and the rat screams that they are going back at it. After that, we have Tokimitsu, who, with an extremely scared tone, asks if they will win it. Zantetsu just tells himself to keep on running, and Nanase looks intense as he says that they got it. Charles has a smirk as he tells them all to do it, and that this is the final sprint. Shido looks like a pure maniac, like always, as he says that he will take the spotlight for the finale, and Rin is just quiet, thinking that he will destroy everything in his way. After that, we get over to the Masters, who are both pulling some funny faces as they just got owned by Isagi in the last chapter. Loki tells Noah that he needs to fix Isagi's attitude and that it's his responsibility as a master, and Noah just refuses. But he says that he doesn't need to fix anything as Isagi isn't wrong. Loki asks him what it's supposed to mean and asks Noah if he is saying that Loki lost. Noah says no, and that the final result is still to come. However, maybe they were forced to open this door, the door to Isagi Yoichi's ego. Loki then kind of owns Noah as he says that instead of using Isagi, Noah was the one who got used. Noah says yeah, and that this Neo-Egoist League wasn't just for making money, as it even involved the ego of the rivals they wanted, saying that Blue Lock was Jinpachi's experimental ground for accelerating the evolution of an egoist at an insane speed. And then we see the legend himself, as he is sitting in his chair watching all of this go down. Looking at Noah, who says that they got played into his gamble perfectly, Ego then does his signature move as he pushes up his glasses and kind of mocks him by saying that it took him long enough to notice and calls him a so-called genius. Ego says that what he wanted was a striker with the greatest ego in the world and a burning intense poison to ignite everything. Henri is just looking at him like he's completely lost it, but Ego continues as he says that whether they could handle it or not was a total gamble, but they survived that insane environment, gaining the mindset and skills to endure it, asking them to prove that the seed of this evolution is the unique originality that will change the world. And alongside that, we get another insane panel with Rin restarting the game, and Isagi and Kaiser running side by side with Isagi having his puzzle pieces and Kaiser having his flower things. After that, on the last panel, Ego continues and says that the birth of a new egoist begins. And then we get another insane panel with Isagi's, Kaiser's, and Rin's eyes all burning up with excitement and looking more insane than ever as they want to be the hero of this game. The commentators say that this game enters its final phase with 1 point to go. The ball goes to Blue Lock's ace, Rin Itoshi, and I don't know why, but he looks so cool as he is trapping the ball and just getting ready to go crazy. We then get a close-up panel of Rin, who says to himself that it's only 1 more point and that he will become this game's destroyer, as we actually see here as he is playing with Igarashi and Raichi, not even leaving them a chance to go at him. Both just looked back at Rin in shock. The commentators then said that Rin's been slipping between those tightly packed defenders by himself, calling it such an explosive dribbling technique. However, right after Raichi and the rat was another monster lying in wait, and it was, of course, Isagi Yoichi, who came right in front of Rin's path while looking crazier than ever. Isagi's eyes light up, and he has steam coming out of his mouth as he says, "Right here, you beast!" Rin wasn't expecting Isagi, so he tried to quickly think about what to do. He thinks about maybe dodging Isagi, and then trying to get a shot in. He thinks about it again as he is dribbling, but then just says no, and instead of dodging him, he decides to just completely crash into Isagi instead, which is just wild, as he is completely manhandling Isagi here. However, with Isagi gone from his position, Rin has now gotten a chance at scoring, as he can see his shooting point. Gagamaru is getting ready for Rin's upcoming shot, but that's when someone comes in and changes everything, as Kaiser, out of nowhere, comes in and slide tackles the ball away from Rin's legs, which leaves him stunned. Anyway, Kaiser is actually looking extremely cold as he is lying on the ground and looks at Rin as he says that his pleasure points are obvious as shit. Rin just looks back at him, and we can see that Rin is annoyed to the max. After that, both Isagi and Kaiser get up and start to run past them. Rin turns around and sees them running towards him with their insanely cool aura, and then it finally clicks for him as he now understands that the once unimaginable duo is working together, which I myself still can't get around. Isagi then compliments Kaiser's interception before calling him a shitty rose, which makes it a kind of backhanded compliment, but I don't think Kaiser really cares. Isagi then thinks that when he charged into Rin, it gave Kaiser a chance to gauge Rin's shot timing and move in to intercept it. Kaiser thinks to himself that they together can actually do this, and that they can kill the geniuses with logic. After that, he tells Isagi to let go, and that's exactly what the two of them do as they rush up on the field and think that they will become machines working towards victory. The first victim of Isagi's and Kaiser's attack is Nanas, who gets completely fooled by Kaiser. Zantetsu screams that he will break their chain, but we later see that Isagi has managed to shake off Tokimitsu and is running almost freely on the field, and because of that, Kaiser sends away an outstanding pass toward him. After that, a no-name in PXG finally realizes how much of a threat these two actually are. Anyway, the ball went to Isagi, but it left him just as quickly as Tokimitsu had caught up, and Kaiser had in the meantime become free. Tokimitsu, while being completely out of breath, says that their plays are too compatible. However, as the pass is heading over to Kaiser, he does something unexpected as he jumps over the ball and lets it instead come into the hands of Hiyori, as he, while trapping the ball, says that it's not just their problem, but that their blood runs through the whole team. Two no-names from Bastard Munchen agree and get pumped as Hiyori says this, as Kaiser's and Isagi's team-up has given some sort of light to the team. After that, we see that Nanas finally understands the gravity of this situation, as he says that Isagi and Kaiser were enemies before, but now that they've teamed up, all of Bastard Munchen is logically working as one. And with that, we get this insanely cool panel of Hiyori passing the ball to Isagi, who then passes it to Kaiser. We then hear the commentators say that it's one pass after another, and that they have never seen this level of team-wide coordination before. We also see a ton of comments from spectators, who question how this teamwork between Isagi and Kaiser even came to light, and also praise the duo, saying that they should have done this from the very beginning. After that, Raichi gets in control of the ball. He looks around and says, "Do it," as he passes it back to Hiyori. Hiyori gets the ball and says that he is on it. Hiyori looks ahead and says that complementing each other's movements with no wasted motion and giving their best over and over with those two working together as the team's nucleus makes it easy to visualize a goal. He puts his foot back and is getting ready to send away the pass while saying that those two are the future of Bastard Munchen. Hiyori then sends away the pass while saying that they aren't just the future of Bastard Munchen, but that they are making a cutting-edge design for a new era of soccer. We can also see that Shidu tried his best to intercept the pass, but unfortunately ended up missing the timing. We then see that Hiyori's pass is going straight towards Isagi, who looks extremely fired up and says, "Come on." He has his puzzle pieces around him, ready for him to use at any moment. He receives the ball, and Gabin tries to come in and stop it. But even with Gabin in front of Isagi, he still finds a way, as he first makes a feint, then goes into his infamous two-gun volley stance, which I just absolutely love. This design of an attack is just wild, and I'm all here for it. However, at the bottom of the panel, we can see some feathers, and those come into play as Isagi shoots the ball. However, it ends up being blocked by the crow Karasu Tabito, who sends it flying into the air. He looks at Isagi intensely, and Isagi is just left stunned, looking at him and wondering what happened. However, it's far from over as the ball is high up in the air, but it's going down, and it's going towards none other than Kaiser, who thinks that luck is finally on his side. The ball falls down rapidly, and Kaiser, right off the bat, sends away one of his powerful Kaiser impacts towards the goal. But to everyone's surprise, it doesn't hit the back of the net, but instead hits Charles on his head. Charles has a smirk on himself as he just says a devil's emoji. However, I'm sure that he's completely brain dead now after taking a Kaiser impact head on. Anyway, Kaiser is just like Isagi and is completely stunned, but we then get back to Isagi, who thinks that they anticipated the timing of their shots and is just left wondering how's that even possible. However, we then see someone land and say that he can't stop someone he doesn't understand, but says that if it's logical, then he can get there just in time. We then see both Karasu and Charles looking extremely cold, as they have the same sort of aura around them, and it looks like some sort of darkness, but not the same one as Rin has. Anyway, Karasu tells them that the two of them are just like Kaiser and Isagi, and then Charles adds in by calling them dumbasses and throws in another devil's emoji. Kaiser looks extremely annoyed by all of this. However, that can't be said for Isagi, as he is entering his god mode. It looks like he is just emitting light, and his puzzle pieces are going crazy around him as he says that he understands, and that both Karasu and Charles are also adaptable, talented learners. Everyone is keeping their eyes on the ball as they want to be the hero to reach it first. After that, we see God Isagi, who is glowing like crazy, as he says that the coordination logic Kaiser and himself were using can be just barely stopped by other exceptionally talented learners, and this time he is referring to both Charles and Karasu, and because of that, Isagi knows better than anyone that they can't get a goal using normal means. After that, he starts to sprint, and we can clearly see his puzzle pieces starting to resolve and change up after him. Anyway, he tells himself to stop thinking and to change it up instead. He knows that he doesn't need feelings as he has abandoned those, but now what he has to do is ring out an idea of how to get past Karasu and Charles, to finally then take home this victory. The one who got the ball was none other than Zantetsu, who trapped it wonderfully with his chest, while having Ness clinging onto him and Kunigami to the side. Even so, Zantetsu is determined not to let this chance slip, so he calls out for a table-turning counter, and with this, he sends away the ball towards Shido while telling him to just end this already and calling him a demon bastard. It looks like Shido is straight up flying through the air as he meets up with the ball. Anyway, the first thing he says when he reaches the ball is that he's gotta come, and I don't want to speculate exactly what he means by that, but he is the freak of Blue Lock for a reason. Anyway, he gets a slight smirk as he asks his team if they will hate him if he takes too long. However, Shido faces trouble right off the bat as Reichi, Hiyori, and Kiora come forward and are set on stopping him. Reichi declares to Shido that they will be the ones to put him down. Anyway, this panel is actually kinda funny for some reason, as Shido has all three of them around him, and they are just locking him into place with their triple press. However, for some reason, Shido isn't too fazed by this, as he just smiles and says that he's got plenty of ideas, as he sends the ball backward to none other than the other monster in PXG, Itoshi Rin, who is just as shocked as I am by Shido's pass. Reichi then looks back in pure shock, saying that Shido passed to Rin. While everyone is distracted by Shido's play, he uses this chance to get out of their press without any trouble. After that, he says that if their aces are teaming up, then Rin and Shido should team up as well, also giving Rin a cute little nickname, which I'm sure he will hate. Anyway, we don't get an answer to Shido's team-up request right off the bat, as it looks like Rin is frozen in shock. However, his peace of mind gets interrupted as both Karasu and Charles comes on either side of him. Karasu tells him to let him help and calls him a dumbass, while Charles says that PXG is super evolving and says a devil emoji like the weirdo he is. Hiyori looks at this in shock and asks if they are for real this time, and Kiora, beside him, admits that he never saw this coming. After that, Rin honestly really shows off against Hiyori as he makes a backheel chip over to Karasu behind him, who follows up with a light tap pass over to Charles. Charles doesn't waste any time either as he makes a backheel pass to Shido with his signature devil's emoji, and Shido dashes towards it and reaches it just in time. And I just love how flawless and fast PXG's passing looks. It's oddly satisfying to look at. Anyway, after that, we see the rat who has come in Shido's way and is standing before him. He screams that this is the end of the line and also goes on with this three treasures bullshit. He looks determined and tells Shido to just come on, while in his head he is thinking that he will stop him no matter what and then become the hero. Shido looks more furious and more devious than usual, which is hard to top. Anyway, with a dark aura around him, he asks the rat if he really thinks that someone like him can stop Shido. Shido then shifts the ball between his feet before breaking out in an insane chop cross, which makes him fly through the rat while telling him to try it in another life. However, all of the praying finally pays off as he somehow manages to throw himself back and catch Shido's shoulder. Even Shido is amazed by this, while of course being extremely annoyed. Anyway, as he is falling to the ground, he manages to get a pass in the last second and says that they can't stop his explosion. The pass has an insane curve to it as it's heading towards the goal area where none other than the #1 striker lies in wait. Rin's rage aura is out as well as his tongue. The rat, who looks lost in despair, screams at them to stop him, and that's when we see two small panels of both Isagi and Kaiser, who say, "Now and right here." And we can see that they managed to pinpoint the exact moment as they reached Rin, and were able to tackle him away from the ball, and let me just say that Isagi and Kaiser's team-up is so insanely sick. Anyway, Rin is in total awe by this, as he thinks that the shitty rose blocked him to slow down his movement, and Isagi used that moment to steal away the ball, and is asking himself if their thinking is perfectly in sync. Anyway, the ball falls high up and goes out of bounds. Gagamaru compliments them and calls them the Brainiac Duo, saying that this is their ball. We then see Isagi, who is out of breath and kneeling on the field. After that, he says that Shido's and Rin's teamwork is too shallow, just like how they can't become special by pulling off their genius moves. You geniuses can't beat those talented learners when it comes to logical coordination. After that, both Kaiser and Isagi go into demon mode as they look wilder and cooler than ever. They tell them to keep playing crazy soccer, and that they will never be able to outsmart them, which leaves both Shido and Rin visibly frustrated. Anyway, that's when the announcer goes off. It says that there was a malicious foul during the previous play, and that the play continued because PXG was at an advantage, but Gurimu Igarashi will receive a yellow card. His first shock as he hears this, but then he becomes visibly angry and scared before someone on the side says that he is out. It's none other than the stone statue Noel Noah, who says that Rin has already seen through his plot of throwing his body into him to make him get a foul, and that his other abilities aren't enough to cut it at this level, telling Igarashi to take a seat before he wrecks this game. It looks like everything freezes for Igarashi before he screams that he can still fight, saying that he will be worthless if he gets swapped out now as he doesn't have a salary value, and that if he doesn't play more, then it's all over for him. He looks lost as he screams at Noah to just give him one last chance. But before he can even finish his sentence, Noah tells him to take a seat and that his theory is utterly lacking in logic. He continues and says that their objective is to win, and that's it. Noah doesn't need anyone on the field who's not necessary for that. He then looks actually scary as he, for the last time, tells Igarashi to take a seat and that his time is over. Igarashi then falls down to the floor and his whole body feels heavier than ever before. He looks lost as he wonders if it's really over and if his soccer life and his dream have come to a stop. After that, someone places his hand on Igarashi's round head. Igarashi, while crying his eyes out, looks up and sees the goat Isagi. Isagi then tells Igarashi that he is only here because he was here. After that, we see some small puzzle pieces with some moments they shared together as Isagi.
Thanks for watching our video. We will show you the rest in our next video.